for Schindler. Has a chance to write his name in Huddersfield Town legend. And he takes that chance!
Hi then, good evening everybody, and welcome to the Andy Takes That Chance podcast and to our first ever Twitter Spaces cast. And we've obviously picked a belter to start with, so we'll run this like a phone in. So we'll have a little chat about the game and then bring you guys in if you want to speak. We've got Cozzy and Johnny. Johnny seems to have muted himself at the minute, so we'll bring...
Matt, I nearly did a Tom Lees there, just knocked everyone off, man. But I've not knackered it up that bad.
No. Right. So I think the way we'll do this is we'll have our little chat and then we'll invite you guys in if you guys want to do it, like I say, like a phone in, and you can have your say and do what you want to do. So yeah, lots of fun to have, I reckon. So just before we get going, just to shout out to our sponsors, Magic Rock, who always help us out. So remember the code AHTTC10 if you want to get 10% off some sweet lager online. Right then, so right guys, another absolutely rancid opening 30 minutes, I think it's fair to say. Town seemed to set the stall out like they were playing a prime Barcelona rather than the side bottom of the championship, which was a little bit disappointing. The opening goal is pretty appalling, isn't it, really? Sorba's thrown himself to the ground looking for a free kick, but there's still a situation to defend there, and we've not engaged the attackers, and we've just sort of backed off and let them deliver a ball into the box. Tom Lees, who was outstanding last year, one of my favourites, has been out-jumped by a good player in Josh Sargent. I think he's a really, really talented player. We've commented a little bit on the lack of height, haven't we, at the back? But it's a little bit too easy, and then it's 2-0 Daniel Sinani. I remember quite a few Huddersfield fans going, "No, we don't want to sign this guy, Daniel Sinani," and he's absolutely ripped us to shreds, hasn't he? In that first half, he looked really good, and you know, he's danced around Lee Nichols after a little bit of luck and put it in the back of the net. And 2-0 down, it's game over after, you know, barely 20 minutes, isn't it? A lot of ball watching. There's probably a lot of criticism that you can label. I don't think I can be bothered singling out too many people because I don't really like to do that. I think one of my bits, Cozzy, was I was a little bit perplexed by how we seem to go with a bit of a mid-block and then not engage. You know, if you're going to sort of retreat and stand off, you need to sort of go low, don't you? And kind of pack the box. But we did neither, and that was a little bit frustrating in that first half hour. And there's still a lot of things to iron out, isn't there? Cause it's
oh man, it was so depressing. Like I listened to Radio Norwich before the game and listening to some of their fans. Honestly, they were ready to turn. It were toxic, man. They were wanting. Some of them were wanting him to go. They haven't won a home game since January, have they? So I just thought on the back of Saturday, and I thought we were lucky to win that. To be honest, I know some people thought we deserved it, but I thought we were fortunate. I just wanted to see us go for it, you know. And maybe I'm a bit naive because they have still got some quality players. But come on, Town. But it was pathetic, mate. The press, they were lazy. They were like no one getting stuck in. It was just pathetic, and it was so there for us to get stuck in early doors, get the crowd on the back, and maybe even sneak a goal. But honestly, the goals were so deflated. Now how it was easy, you know, to get the cross in. The guy just like heads at Tom Lees. Night I'll never forget down there, and that was the worst thing for me, Matt. Why this is the 5th game in a row now we've just started like just letting teams do what they wanted, and I really thought Saturday, even though I thought we were a bit false to win, it'd fire us up and we'd go down there and take advantage of there. You know, they were bottom, but they won't be obviously for much longer. But I mean, you just saw at the end how their confidence were going, wasn't it? I mean, embarrassing. We nearly sneaked a goal in the end, obviously with Pat Jones just got that pass right to Rhodes, but how many more times can we do that? And oh God, there's so much to dissect in this game, but it's so frustrating that start because, you know, they're playing their songs, they're 2-up, everyone's smiling. Sinani's doing what he wanted, point to prove, obviously, and it was so depressing because I just thought, honestly, their fans, I've never heard them like that. I thought they're normally supportive down there. Jeremy Goss were calling the game on the stream I'm watching. He was slagging us. I said we were lazy, we looked disinterested. He said it would look like the same Huddersfield team that rocked up in the Corberan's first season. And wow, it was so poor. The fact that we nearly equalised, honestly, I mean, the biggest robbery since the Great Train, but I'll let you take it back on, Matt. But the start, why? Just speechless, man. He surely can't tell him to do that, can he? He cannot. But
no, I can't imagine that's the plan. But yeah, it was like 35 minutes in, and we all of a sudden sort of realised that, hang on, this isn't prime Barcelona we're playing here. We're playing Norwich City, who are decent, aren't they? Norwich City, good side. And then all of a sudden, we came back into the game 35 minutes, but the Tom Lees one, I hate these things in football where Tom Lees touches him slightly and he goes down, and I hate that, Johnny. In football, the sort of the gamesmanship, but it's part of the game, isn't it? You've got to sort of accept this is how it is these days. But the sort of slight touch on the shoulder, down he goes, red card, and it's you think it's game over. We've come back into it. We'll talk about how they've rallied and done really well, sort of coming back into that. And some of the young lads have come on and done absolutely fantastically. So this isn't all going to be, digging people out, etc. Because there's some really good positives to look on here, mate. But that sort of situation there, and I know Tom Lees will be really disappointed. And he, like I say, he's one of my favourite players. He's a fantastic leader and a great speaker, but he's not going to sort of look back on that with fond memories, is he?
No, it's one of them where, like you said, 10, 15 years ago, it doesn't. I mean, there's two players, Tustin, the strongest man, gets there. I think Lee's, day-to-day and age and the way football is nowadays, he won't complain. You've just seen the way he looks at himself and looks at the sky and kind of walks off before the referee even kind of turns around and shows. And he knows what he's done, and he knows he's. Do you know what I mean? That's it for 3 games, which is gonna cost us. Unfortunately, because I know. Do you know what I mean? I think he'll say himself he's not kind of kicked on this year exactly how he finished last year, but that's not a criticism. That's just the way it is. I'm sure he will kind of come back into that form, but he's going to be missed for 3 games, and he's one of them where, don't know, I think we might have instinctively trying to stop the player, put the player off, but yeah, it's a shame. It is soft, but then you equally can't blame the Norwich player for kind of going down and making the referee have to make a decision, because flip it around, if it were Danny Ward, we'd probably potentially want him to do the same. I don't know. That might split opinion. Some players might want him to stay on his feet and try and go for goal, because he probably could have done that as well. But it's interesting how it affected the game, really, because after the first initial kind of 5 minutes where we kind of got to grip and, the formation changed slightly, we've gone and arguably done a bit better. So whether we'd have changed, whether the game would have fallen the same if Leeds hadn't got off, who knows? But whether we've been able to kind of push on and actually kind of take the game to Norwich, because we seem to, like you say, after the first kind of 35, 40 minutes, stop showing, I don't know, a bit of respect to Norwich that we show them, or actually kind of realised, we actually can play these, we can play our game, and we can actually get something out of it. It just felt like Cosy said, the game just felt like the players weren't either quite at it, or they were pressing at the wrong time, or weren't pressing together, or they weren't quite pressing. They're pressing 80%, which is effectively pointless. If you're going to press 8%, you may as well not even bother. You may as well stay in position. And yeah, it's the first part of the game, the first 20 minutes, 25 minutes, which has cost us, and it's so frustrating because it's not happy clappy, but there are a good 20, 25 minutes in games. Yeah, I'd agree. Maybe the Burnley one, he might be a bit cheap saying 20 minutes of quality in that, but there's certainly good elements of games, each game we play, where you can point to and think that's good enough. That's good enough to get points in this league. But it's let down by a massive chasm of quality in the other, 45, 50 minutes where it's just not good enough. So it's just getting that consistency. Who's to blame for that? It's a tough one. Be interested to see what people's views are, but there's definitely enough in that team to challenge anyone. It's just trying to get it done. Over 90 minutes, and also cutting out individual errors. I think that's significant. It's costing us. Certain players either aren't good enough or need to kind of up the game or get back to form quickly. I think that's something which is also costing us, which no doubt we might touch on as well. But yeah, big loss, and now leaves 3 games. Evans Green probably will come back in, or maybe Boyle, depending on what he wants to do. But it's an area which is suddenly starting to look weaker and weaker in defence for various reasons. Injuries, suspensions, etc., and maybe potentially lack of a bit of depth in signings as well.
Absolutely. I've paused his listening and I've invited him to co-host and speak, and he's sat there all shy and quiet and bottling it at the minute. I think he's done one. But I'm trying to get pause in for his 2 bits. But there are some positives as well to look on. I know the first 35 minutes, it's hard to draw some positives out of that because we've essentially played ourselves out of the game quite early. But Danny Schofield's thrown on the likes of Etienne Kamara, and the postman, as I've referred to him, which is really poor joke, I know. Pat Jones, and Pat Jones has really flourished there, and he's come on and he's scored an absolutely outstanding goal, and he's set the stall out and he's set a really high standard now. So it's going to be really interesting to see Pat Jones push on, and he was fantastic, and he almost created a second as well for Jordan Rhodes, but just slightly overhit it. And I think that's, we've an hour into that game, Tom Lees is off, and you're feeling a little bit miserable. But I've come away feeling not so bad now because we've seen Pat Jones come on and he's done what he's done and he's excited me. Etienne Kamara's come on and okay, he's misplaced a couple of passes, but he's put himself around. He's put his foot in, and again, I thought he came out of that quite well as well. So and there's also King Kessler Hayden. I thought had a really decent game on the right hand side. So I think there are positives to take out of this. So it's not a case of just sit here digging people out like we've lost 7-0 again. So there are positives. And what I want to do now is turn over, and also Lee Nichols. You've got to throw in Lee Nichols as well, because there's a part of that game for 10, 15 minutes where...
Bloody hell. Would have been about 8 or 9. It'd have been like before, man. It was sensational, man. What a keeper he is. And that's the only reason why we nearly stole a point. Lee Nichols. And you know what? You just wonder how long he's going to be watching that. I know he signed his new deal thinking, what's going on here? That, like, no protection, were they in front of him? It was just like... It's just incredible, really, wasn't it? The guy is sensational. Without him, well, look what keeper we had for the 7-goal game. Like, it's shocking. But,
it is, mate. It's been expunged from my memory, whoever that was in goal for that 7-0. But yeah, Lee Nichols, he's made
Pereira
3 or 4.
Chris Backets,
Man U legend, mate. It could be back there now. That bad.
Johnny, don't mention the name. It's like Voldemort. You're not supposed to speak the name, are you? But yeah, so I want to get some opinions from other people. So we'll shut up for a little bit now. So I'm inviting a couple of people to listen. Poz has bottled it. He said he's sat in bed. He likes to get his beauty sleep nice and early, does Poz. So he's tucked up. But we do have Brad Barbs. Brad has joined the website recently. He's Huddersfield Town's premier vlogger, I think we'll describe him as. Certainly the best one out there, and I'm delighted to say Brad's stuff will appear on our website as well. So make sure you check that out. So I'll unmute Brad, or you unmute yourself. I'm not sure how this thing works yet. Brad, so if you want to take yourself off mute and bring yourself in, if you're there, that is. I think he's nipped out, hasn't he? So if anyone else wants to speak, just let me know, and I think you can send me a request to speak. So yeah, don't leave me hanging on here by myself. Bring yourself in. Put your hand up.
Did it hurt you, Matt, just while we get someone else to come in? Sinani out. He were obviously going to play well, but he looked incredible, wasn't he? Like one of the players of the season so far. I know we just let him did what he wanted and that as well. And we did stand on that stage, Matt, at the end of the season, sure, didn't we? And said we didn't want, and we thought there's better options. But I must admit, I'm regretting saying that, because he looks good, man. It was great. We've got.
It was great, wasn't he? And I quite like Daniel Sinani. I thought he was a little bit underrated last year amongst Town fans. I think I know he dips in and out of games, doesn't he, a little bit, but I think he does have a lot of quality on that left foot. But we've got a speaker now, Bryony, who's been on the warm up with Brady. Let's bring Bryony in, and she can have her say on the game. Go on, Bryony. And she's on mute as well. This is going great today.
This is like Tom Lees' efforts.
Go on, Brian, if you can take yourself off mute, unless this is me doing it on this dodgy version of BlueStacks that can't do it. Let's invite her in. Let's invite her in as a co-host. That seems to work for you guys. So Brad or Brian, whoever wants to jump in first, do so. If anyone else wants to jump in, feel free to do so. But yeah, so there's other little points we can talk about as well, can't we? So trying to dig them out as best I can. So Cozzy, you're good at making off the top of your head. Oh, go on, Johnny.
Well, I just thought obviously Nichols is fantastic and probably kept it a little bit more reasonable. A couple of saves there that if they'd gone past him, no one would have been blaming him. But I thought Nakayama had a decent game as well to pull out from the back four. I thought he kind of recovered well and got some blocks in. I don't necessarily blame him for the first goal. Again, if we get some people off mute that might disagree with me on that one. I think he was kind of sold down the river a little bit, told to go and push, which left the space to come in. I think it was more Ruffles man really. But yeah, I thought he looked comfortable, looked good on the ball, growing into the game, got some good blocks in, covered the space as well, and helped Nichols out. I think he's one of the few of the defenders that kind of you could probably point to instead of an above average game today. So another positive there.
Absolutely. So again, if anyone wants to chat, let me know, and you can come on and have your say. So a phone in only works if people phone in, technically, doesn't it? But so if no one wants to have their say, we'll have to do some Kozi Ryoki or something in the meantime to fill the void. Right, everyone's unmuted. So who wants to jump in first? Anybody or anyone?
There
Brad,
we go.
Go on, Brad. Brad's here, finally. Off you go, bud.
Yeah, he said muted by host, so I think the same.
Not guilty.
I was tapping the button and thinking, what's going on?
Go on, mate. Off you go.
Yeah, no. I think Richard and Johnny both made some really bang on points there.
Thanks, mate.
No, especially about the depth. Obviously, now Lee's being out is for me the main talking point. Because to be honest, if you had asked me before the game if you'd take a 2-1 loss to Norwich, I mean it's negative, but I probably would have. But not this time round. As a general rule, going to Norwich, I would have. But with them being bottom, I don't really see why we went so negative this game. I think this game was a real strong opportunity to go and bang a second win. Really, in the stuff they did play, I mean, yeah, they played some decent stuff, but the goals they scored weren't spectacular. It were just more our errors really that gave them the opportunity to exploit that. So, I mean, when you really look, our goal was probably maybe a bit better than one of theirs. Our goal was individual brilliance, and I just think I hate to single players out, so I'm going to try and keep that to a minimum. But there's I feel like there's a bit of coasting going on in certain parts of the game. You've got Ward. Oh my God, some of the grafting I saw him do today. There were a point where the ball got pinged over the top, and he's chasing it, and he's doing the work of 3 people, and he's done that for plenty of games this season and last. And there's players coasting around him. And then in the final 20 minutes, it reminded me of Birmingham. You've got a little bit, not a lot of urgency going on. There's nothing to lose. We're already 2-1 down with a man sent off. Just go for it. What's the worst that can happen? Big deal. They go and score another. We've already lost. One goal ain't going to make a difference in the grand scheme of things in over a whole season. I'd be very surprised if one single. I think you just muted me there again.
That's Kozi, is that? I know. I was up to no good there. But go on, mate. Off you go.
Brad, I'm having a shock here, mate.
Get off the button. Right, go on, Brad.
And but going to the Sinani goal, I just feel like it was very reminiscent of what Placheta did against Birmingham. Just giving too much time and space and in a dangerous area, and it goes to beg the question. I mean, if you were a gambling man tonight, you really should have been back in Sinani, because I think the writing were on the wall there. Don't get me wrong, it is happy clapper. It is like that, but I think there are some positives to take. But I'm a little disappointed that we didn't just, go for it a bit earlier when we're 2-0 down. Not a lot of urgency, a bit of coasting. And then you've got a lot of players doing all fancy stuff, right? But they're not getting the basics. It's like, Russell's nailing a Cruyff turn and then he goes to make a pass. And it's like it's the hardest thing in the world. And it just doesn't make sense to me. I think we should focus more on the effort than trying to be clever. I think if we focus on grafting, like Ward's doing, and just getting ourselves into good positions off the ball, then when we do win the ball back, we can progress. We can progress much better in my eyes.
Good stuff, Brad. Bryony, after our idiocy, see if you can bring yourself off mute, and we'll bring in you next. Sorry about that.
Hello.
You go.
I'm on the bus and they just put the lights on. I'm blinded. Yeah, I don't really have anything specific to say, to be honest, other than why do we play the last 20, 15 minutes like that and only play those bits like that? Like, why are we coming out with nothing to offer every single match? Like, we concede within the first 20 minutes at least one. Or, like, step your game up. Why are we not coming out to win the game rather than deciding with 20 minutes to go that actually we might have a go at this?
It does appear to be some sort of mental fragility. Are you sort of down at the game at the minute on the bus? Is that where you are?
Yeah. I'm having
Oh.
a wonderful time. I got back from Cornwall at a
So,
festival yesterday. I'm dying, but I'm here.
I know now we've got no excuse, so we sat all comfortable, aren't we, at home? But no, so you've obviously seen it. So the town fans really got behind them, I thought, which was good. You know, the sort of last 20 minutes it came audibly came across, which was really good. So the town fans definitely played their bit. So fair play to everybody that's gone down there and anybody that might be listening as well. From your vantage point where you're watching, so Brad's talked a lot about players sort of coasting. I sort of think it's more sort of instructional and sort of a mentality maybe sort of thing. How was your sort of vision from how the players sort of approached it? And do you think there was any sort of fear maybe, or whether it was just sort of tactical that we would try and contain Norwich for the sort of first 20, 30 minutes and then maybe come at them later on?
I think it's tactical, but not in a way of trying to contain them, in a way of that they're just not being told to attack enough. I think the football that Schofield seems to want to play, if he does want to play it, I'm still a bit iffy about if he does know his own style yet, because he doesn't appear to. But I think that he wants to play that sit-back football, but I don't think that at the moment we have the defensive line to cope with that. I think.
Sorry, Brandy. That's the thing that I got told from someone. I'm not going to name who it was, but that Dan Schofield. I mean, it's only 5 games, but we were going to be throwing men in the box. We were going to be going for stuff, and to be honest, it looks more negative than Carlos so far, albeit only 5 games.
Sorry, my dad's just trying to ask me questions. Yeah, I think I do agree. I do think it looks like quite well. When we're defending, I think it looks very negative. We sit back a lot, and then once we do attack, actually, I think we do play really good moving forward football. There's never enough men in the box, in my opinion. Like Sorba put a crossing that could have been fantastic if someone had been there, and could have just got the red on it. It'd have been brilliant. But because there's nobody in the box, because we insist on playing one man up front, there's nobody there. So it's a fantastic cross, but actually it's a shit cross because no one's there to do anything with it. So I think, if we did throw a few men in the box, I think it would be decent. But at the minute, it is very negative football. I agree.
I'll stick up for Danny Schofield a little bit, and there has been instances of some sort of high press coming back. So there are signs that the high press is coming in, and there was one instance where Kane Kessler-Hayden pressed high and forced an error, and then laid it to Sorba Thomas, and he kind of got his sand wedge under it, didn't he? And I'm not going to try and describe what came off the end of his boot for that one. It wasn't the best moment. But and we're thinking to the goals as well that we scored against Stoke, where they pressed high for the second goal and Dwayne manages to get in and lay it across to Danny Ward. So I think there are definitely elements of what you say, Bryony, about Schofield's style. If he does know what it is, he's not quite getting that across just yet. But I think there are little flashes maybe coming in little points, like maybe what we're trying to see. And it is a little bit different to what Carlos was very sort of set up to contain, move back into shape, and then sort of hit at specific moments. Whereas as Danny, there seems to be a bit more high press. And I'll be honest, I do love a high press. Going back to the David Wagner days, I'm all about that high press. But we've got Johnny Goggs. Johnny, if you're still listening, if I haven't just bored you to death, if you want to jump in and have what you want to say, if you take yourself off mute, if you can.
Thanks very much, Matt. I just listening to what's already been said. I'm going to give Schofield the benefit of the doubt for the time being. I understand what Bryony was saying, and the evidence has not been great so far, and it was another step back this evening, albeit it wasn't on the level of Birmingham and certainly Preston, which was one of the worst performances I've seen in some time from a town side. But I think still giving Schofield a little bit of leeway to get his ideas across, particularly as he has had that abbreviated pre-season. We won't mention the circumstances again of the previous guy who's now over in Greece. We won't labour that point. But I think the point I wanted to make was I was listening to the Radio Leeds commentary beforehand, and there were a couple of players that were highlighted as being on 50 appearances this evening. Two of them have got there. They were saying, in relatively short time, Sorba and Tom Lees, and Tom Lees having done that with a full season and 4 games. And actually, the two of them are looking like they've played a lot of football. They're tired. They're not hitting the levels they were. And I wonder. I mean, obviously, we're going to lose Lees to a suspension now. And I wonder whether, in the case of those two players, they've obviously been massive for Town over the course of last season. Whether actually they benefit from a little time, maybe out of the side, rotate some other options. I mean, we've not got the deepest squad in terms of wing options, and certainly not centre back options with Pearson still out. But I'm just a bit worried with what I'm seeing from those two that were so pivotal. And I don't want to highlight, and focus in on those two because the problems that we have are far wider. But I don't know. It just it seems like the level of football that and the level of work that those two are getting through might be having an effect, and whether a bit of time out the side to maybe get a bit of hunger back and get back to some. Maybe you drop a Boyle in, or even give some of the other wing options a go.
Johnny, what did you? So it's Cos here. What do you think, Sober Thomas? I mean, that miss to me just summed up his season so far. Do you think he's just trying too hard, or I don't know? Is it something a bit more worrying than that as well? Because on Saturday I thought he not back to certainly last season, anything like, but he was better. But tonight, to me, he never recovered from that first goal. I didn't think it would have fouled, to be honest with you. And then obviously the kind of miss compounded. But yeah, he doesn't look an happy guy. And I'm not reading. Obviously, we covered that Instagram post last week, nothing to do with that, but he is a concern because anything good we did last season pretty much revolved around him, and he's struggling, man.
Yeah, maybe that did get in his head early in the game. I mean, I've not played professional football or anything near, so maybe best to ask others. But it may well have stuck with him, and he's still a relatively young guy. He hasn't played a lot of professional football. And he had a good run of things last season. Everything was sort of going his way, and he was the main man. And maybe it's it's starting to catch up with him a little bit. And
another thing to chuck in, Johnny. Sorry to put in again, but the World Cup's obviously Brent Johnson's probably ahead of him in the pecking order now. But the World Cup's coming, wanting to do something pretty special. Really want to mark his name, because at the moment, if you're kind of the Welsh manager, Rob Page, you're looking at that and thinking, Jesus, we need Sorba. Obviously, it's still early days, middle of August, but it's got to be worrying for him as well. Yeah,
he's that's going to be at the front of his mind, and if he's struggling to meet the levels and get those assists and quality of deliveries, because that's the sort of thing in a tight game at any level, domestic or international football, it's going to make the difference. So if he's not reaching that and is cutting a frustrated figure in games as he did tonight, then he's going to struggle.
I think it's important. You make a great point. I think it's important for players like Thomas, maybe Russell, and to kind of have that quality second season. We've seen it with Karoma, had a really good breakout season. Hasn't quite yet hit those heights in Jerusalem. A little bit like second season syndrome to a certain extent. It's having that breakthrough season, but then people kind of find you out. You might get doubled up on. So you've got analysis, your season with analysis for players to kind of look at and be shown from opposition teams. And I think that's where you see players that are going to go on and make it and move onward and upwards in the leagues, and ones that will kind of maybe start to flounder and not quite. And I think I'm not saying that's relevant to Thomas at the moment at all. I think we'll start to see whether he's got that in his locker to actually kind of advance and move forward and adapt and change his game, so he becomes less predictable and he can kind of kick on. So you make a great point, Johnny. I think that's the bit where Thomas might start to find himself. If, do you know what I mean, after 10 games he's still not quite at the races, where he might need to have a look at it and think, right, how can he change his game? How can he adapt his game so he can continue to progress and kind of play how he did at the start of last season?
Yeah, definitely.
Top stuff, Johnny. Thanks for that. It was really good. We'll bring in George next. So, George, if you want to take yourself off mute, you can jump in next. I can see George is connecting. I think he's on dial-up. And
it's agony, and it's like that ball across tonight, nearly for Rhodes. Come on, George. Back of the net.
I think he's disappeared. Or is he here? Nope, he's disappeared. Right, no worries. So if anyone else wants to, I'll just fill the gap while he reappears. But if anyone else wants to jump in with their say, Jerry's online. Jerry, surely Jerry, all the way from Alabama, has something to say. I'm going to invite Jerry in and see what he has to say. Jerry's quite motivational, so he'll always end up making you feel better about things if he's still listening. That is. But anyway, we've invited Jerry there. So the latest on Coventry. So I've picked up a couple of things about the Coventry game. So it's not going to be switched to a home game. There's a couple of people hoping that would be flipped, but that was never likely to be the case. But I'll just finish my point on Coventry and then I'll bring you in, George. But yes, the game is probably going to be, I would expect it to probably not go ahead at this weekend unless they do something miraculous with that pitch. But George, finally connected. Get it off your chest, bud. Oh, breathe deeply. It's all good, George. Are you there, buddy?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you are. How are you doing?
It's saying on my thing that I'm just a listener, so I'm a bit confused. But yeah, it's not really ideal, is it? There's not much that can be said other than off the races.
No. Did you manage to go down to the game, or are you sort of watch it via obvious legal means, isn't it?
Obviously, I follow. Yeah. A 4-hour trip down, getting back at past midnight didn't really seem appealing on a Tuesday night, to be honest. And I know a few people who did, and to be honest, I feel awful for them because that first half, bar the last 10, 12 minutes, shocking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's I think that's the sort of the frustrating point, isn't it, from Danny Schofield? And we're not going to obviously go overboard on Danny Schofield because he's new. He's only 4 or 5 games in, isn't he? But we've now seen the sort of first half hour, in the majority of the games, bar maybe Stoke, who maybe didn't come at the traps that well, but we've looked a little bit sketchy, haven't we? Sort of the first half hour, and it throws me back a little bit to the Danny Cowley period, whereby under Danny Cowley, everything was kind of sit back and see what the opposition have, in the first half, and then come out of the traps in the second half. But we're getting caught cold a bit too often, aren't we?
I was one of the unlucky ones to go to Preston, and it was shocking. I think even with Cowley, like you pointed out, the plan would be to contain the opposition for the first half and then try and attack them or try to get a result in the game in the second. But with Schofield, and I know he's a new manager, and you can't call your verdict as 4 games into the season, but it's there's no bar Stoke where I thought it was probably one of our best performances. This will be a bit controversial, but not just of this season. That's pretty obvious, but probably going back to about Marchish, I think we played really, really well in that first half particular. But by that game, there's not really a plan we can go off.
So, yeah, Stoke is definitely the template or the blueprint, isn't it? So, yeah, cheers for that, George. What we'll do is we'll try and bring in anyone else. So anyone else wants to get in? So I've absolutely just killed George off there. Sorry, George, didn't mean to completely kill you off. I meant to mute you. So anyone else that wants to join in, have their say. I've asked Josh Quirk if he fancies doing it, but he's hiding under his covers, reading, looking at his book. So I'm not sure what's going on.
Just a quick one while I'm feeling a bit of time before someone comes on. What do you think tonight brings? I mean, we talked about bringing people in on Sunday, but do you think after watching that, it brings more evident, maybe signings in them than not, or is it just not a time to panic? Really, what do you think? What do you think there's still left?
I'm a little bit conflicted because on one hand, if you bring in more players, it adds to the sort of upheaval with Danny Schofield trying to get his message across. And the problem really is that for me, it looks like there's still some kind of tactically some sort of mixed communication, or the players aren't quite settled on what they're trying to do at the minute. And you throw more players into that, it could go both ways. It could be you could bring someone in who's absolutely perfect for the setup. We mentioned it at the weekend, didn't we? Central midfield and maybe left wing back is probably the area where you would say we probably need the most in the first 11. Although Ruffles has still got to play himself into some sort of form. It's like we mentioned, it took Ollie Turton 10-15 games to get a groove on last season. The only issue is if you're not getting the results, it adds to the pressure, doesn't it? So Radoni, I thought after the first half hour, I thought Radoni and Hogg struggled in that first half hour, but from then on, I thought Radoni actually was really bright. So him in central midfield is looking a good bet at the minute. So it could go two ways, mate. It could either reinvigorate and push us on, or it could sort of push back the process a little bit more. And I hate saying the process because I know everybody does it, but it could potentially. But the players have to be absolutely right that we bring in. And I would probably maybe look at someone on the left side. But again, it depends whether he's going to go with a back four or back five. If he goes back four, Nakayama probably moves across. But if they go with a back five, then maybe there's a wing back on. Maybe Ben Jackson potentially has a go at some point if Josh Ruffles can't play himself into some form. But I would probably go with that, mate. But I'd maybe hold off a little bit. But if the right player comes up in those positions, then you've got to go for it. There's a guy at Rotherham at the minute who costs way too much money for us, who I really like, called Dan Barlaser, who I think would fit brilliantly into our midfield. But he is probably going to get expensive at some point. So that's probably not a very good offering from me. But anyone else want to have a chat? Cozzy, you can fill the void for a little bit until anyone else comes in.
Some of Schofield's quotes just from the club Twitter feed. We've lost tonight. That's not easy to take. Loose passes cost us tonight, and you have to keep the ball against a team like Norwich. I still believe we're very competitive. I'm confident we'll have a good season, as are the players. I've said that we can never doubt the character of this group, and tonight they fought for the club and each other. The subs had a really big impact. I'm particularly pleased for Pat Jones, and then he scored the goal. He's a confident kid. And then I won't read some of the fans' replies underneath, but basically just saying we can't fault the effort and application. We're disappointed with the concession of the two early goals, and Tom Lee's sending off made it difficult. But yeah.
Tell us about your thoughts on Pat Jones then, because I was really I came away not happy, but I came away feeling like I'd seen something in that game which excited me, like what you mentioned earlier. Pat Jones was it really?
And against some good players there for Norwich, but God, it sounds like I'm having kind of putting a bit of damper on it. But it's a no lose situation for him, isn't it? We're dead and buried. He can just kind of run his heart out and show what he can do as well. But I'm just hoping now he's just kind of not lost to it all, and we can kind of keep him involved, because I think there were one or two. It started in that Plymouth game on it, I think, in that FA Cup under COVID, was it? Or did we? Or were that with fans? And I can't remember now, but a bit ago. And then I'm sure he played at Norwich again, Matt. Or it might have been middle in the drubbing that we got as well. But
I think he did play that Norwich game. I think he did.
Yeah, he did. So they'll probably be signing him for about 8 million or something tomorrow. But no, he looked good. Obviously, the bright spark as well. And if we're to believe what Schofield says there, as good as his word, then he's going to be still involved as well. But just throwing it back to you, maybe Johnny. But do you think it's going to be a good thing that the game's probably going to bite the dust on Saturday, or what do you think? Obviously, with Leeds, I mean, it depends on his bands, but I suppose it'll just spill over to another game. But or is it one of those you want to? Because I just think Coventry away is not the greatest to get it back going. But then you got West Brom the week after. It's pretty difficult. So think it's a tough one, isn't it?
I'd always like to play around with a break. Personally, I think. I think now dust has settled a little bit. Tonight's a weird one because the sending off changed the game. It's hard to know what it really would look like to properly analyse it. I think there were positives from tonight, and with the way we played against Stoke, I think we could have maybe gone into the Coventry game and got something. They've not necessarily an absolutely roaring start, but then flip it round, look at the other side. Schofield has had a short pre-season. We know that. Whether they do something, the game's cancelled behind closed doors, or do you know what I mean, some form of 11-a-side game probably happen over the weekend anyway, just to fitness and legs. He gives them a good kind of 2-week window to say, right, the game's gone, we know what's happening. Let's kind of work a bit more on what we want to do, the system. We've touched on that already tonight, and I think we did on the pod last week, that what Danny Schofield, what we were alluding to think Danny Schofield's system isn't necessarily what we've seen. Now, that could be just because he's thought he's not got time to get that across properly, needs must kind of thing. I know he's not coming midway through a season, but he has kind of come in a bit blindsided, so he might have pragmatically thought he's going to try and do things steadily throughout the season if he can. It's a good 2-week window to do that without a game. So it could be a positive. It really could be a positive. Had we not got points against Stoke, I think it would have been horrendous to be a game behind. Read the table, but we've managed to get something out of the Stoke game. We do have 3 points on the board. We're not sat stony bottom with nothing. So potentially, it could be a good thing to have those 2 weeks. Like I said, I don't think the game's going to go ahead. It doesn't look like it's been announced, but I think the players will be wise to that. So as soon as we can get that and we know where we are, we can work and use that time. So a little mini pre-season, and we'll know if it works or not, won't we? With a tough test after it in West Brom, but I think a bit of time in the training ground, I think Danny Schofield will probably bite a hand off for that. In all honesty.
Right, so Josh Quirk, I've bullied him into coming to speak. So sorry, Josh, for the words I said, because you're obviously going to get your revenge now. But if you want to take yourself off mute, buddy, you can have your bit as well.
Hi, mate. Yeah, right. How you doing? Okay, mate.
Good, yeah, all good. How are you doing?
Oh, a bit disappointing that, wasn't it? It's just one of them, innit? I said to you earlier today, didn't I? I just thought it were an ideal time to go play him today. Bottom at league, no confidence, and we go and put in the first half like that again. It's just one of them. There are positives to take from it, like you lads have said. It's just, sort of Pat Jones coming on. I think anyone who watches the B team or seen out of it knows that he's got something about him, and we can always take that out of the game. And judging on some of the players' performances so far this season, you'd probably put him in there to have a start next game. But yeah, I don't know. It's just one of them, really, isn't it? Where he's sort of one step forward, 2 steps back. You think against Stoke, we have a good half of football, and then we put that in today, and let's be honest, it was 2-1, but it flattered us really, didn't it? If it weren't for Lee Nichols, that could have been 4 or 5 quite easily. And I don't particularly think Norwich were any good, which is the worry.
So what we've gone on about. Cosy asked the question earlier, didn't he, about potential players and what have you, Josh? Where do you see the sort of weaknesses in and amongst this 11, and what would you do?
We've got to be looking at left back more than out, haven't we? I mean, midfield's a worry. I know Kamara came in and did quite well, but Radoni did well last week. But if we haven't really got a runner in there, someone who can carry the ball, we're sort of struggling again. And I think left backs is probably the big worry, because you saw in that first half, it were easy for Norwich, to be honest, wasn't it, down that left hand side. It would just overload after overload on Josh Ruffles, and it was pretty clear from early on that that's where they were targeting. Nothing came down their left; it was all down their right. And like I say, you got Daniel Sinani popping up in little spaces, pulling strings for him. It's one of them. We got torn all over the place, didn't we?
Yeah, I think that's probably where we'd all go. So we'll bring Matty Bentley in as well now. So Matty's, I think, requested to speak. So, Matty, what have you got to say on things?
Just a couple of things, really. We'll go back to Sober Thomas. I just think at the moment, I just don't think he's playable. I really don't. You look at the new guy who came on, and I just think he put more effort in the 14 minutes plus he was on than Sorba's done all season so far. I'll go back to Sorba last season, absolutely brilliant, got his Wales call up, and after that I just think he went downhill. And then the other problem you've got is, why can't we play the first half? We seem to be not playing football in the first half at all. We go you look at the games. First 10 minutes we were 1-0 down. Second game 1-0 down again. You just think, what's the plan? And then second half we can play football. I just don't get why we can't play football for 90 minutes. I just don't get his tactics at the moment.
I'll throw this over to Johnny.
Yeah, I think, like I said, it's come out a few times, hasn't it? I think it's a bit of a recurring issue. Brian kind of touched on it before. It's whether he's trying to be a bit cautious. I know Cowie's used to do that, where the first 20-25 minutes it was look, don't concede, and then move into the game from there. I don't know what he's trying to do, or whether I don't think he's been asked into whether he's looking to do that, whether he's looking to come out the traps quickly, because he's certainly not looking to do that, whether it's psychological and the players have got it a bit in their head that try and keep it tight, don't lose it in 20, and people kind of make mistakes because they're overthinking it. It's a tough one, but it's a problem. It's a problem that needs solving, because like I said right at the start, we can't have a good 20-25 minutes in games where we score, because we are scoring, we are creating chances, and we are scoring. I know we've got Nicholas to thank that it's 2 tonight. We've also created good chances to score. You've got a goal, which we did score. Thomas has missed. Pat Jones with a slightly better pass, no fault of his own, into Rhodes. Rhodes probably does finish that. So we've got a chance to score 3 goals there, but it's pointless if we're 2-0 down after 20-25 minutes. And it's a pattern which has been evident in every game. So there's clearly an issue there. What it is, maybe time will tell. Maybe approach will change, or the players just need to kind of be switched on. It's really hard to know what it is, but it's a pattern that's been in every game so far, and really does need fixing. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to get points. And one thing we were good at last season was, do you know what I mean, staying tight and not letting goals in. And we would soak up a bit of pressure, and other teams you'd see on Twitter would say, how are they third, how are they fourth, how have they won this game? It's because we were solid and we didn't concede cheap goals, and we took our chances when they came. And we need to get back to that, because the personnel's similar, the coaching staff's similar. But it's a problem that does need solving.
Do you think Danny Schofield's the right man to do that?
Again, it's a good question. It's a hard question to answer right now. My personal opinion, I'm very much in the camp of Danny
Main
Schofield.
question, Johnny, is your washing machine going off in the background?
Yeah, it is. I'm trying to. Just a bit of context. If I go up a set of stairs, I get shouted at for waking up a 10-month-old, and if I stay closer, Matt's going to shout at me for my beeping washing machine. But Matt's further away than my missus, so I'm staying down here. But I'll answer quickly and go on mute. But for me, Danny Schofield, I think I was still in the camp of giving him time. That's not just because I'm soft. I still think there's enough there. That I think we can start to progress. I think if we continue to make mistakes like this over the next kind of 10, 15 games, then things might need to be looked at. But at the moment, I'd be very much saying stick with Schofield, is my opinion at the moment. I think it's too early to be looking elsewhere.
Now, if Norwich was, to say, a better side tonight and took the chances, would you be saying that now?
Nail him. Go on. Nail him, Matt.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of them, but then they haven't, do you know what I mean? And you could flip it around and say, if Sorba takes his chance and Pat Jones' his pass is literally a yard close to Rhodes, you could say, well, there's 2 extra goals there. So I get why you're saying that, and yeah, it is a bit devil's advocate, and you're right in what you said. I mean, the scoreline's one thing, but there was plenty of options for Norwich to score more, but they haven't, and I think we've got to take it as it was. Leeds massively affects the game as well, rightly or wrongly. So I think it's a real tough game to judge him on, because it's Norwich, but we play bottom of the table. That's a bit of a weird one. You've got Leeds that goes off during the second half. We played with 10 men. That's a bit of a weird one. There's a couple of individual mistakes which are hard to point the finger at Schofield as well. And there were chances created. So for me, it's the needle's not moved closer to. Do you know what I mean? His job's safe, but it's not moved closer to kind of time to get rid either. I'd say it's just stayed the same. Not to sit on the fence with that, but I think it's not moved one way or the other. Really, is my opinion.
You know what though? There's always someone in life worse than yourself, guys. And does anyone see that Colchester result tonight?
City, yeah, outstanding.
96th minute. You think Norwich is a long way back when you've lost, but try and go to Colchester.
Yeah.
Because he loves it, mate. Right, so I've thrown out some invites. If anyone else wants to come in, feel free to do so. I've sent a couple out to the Americans, Jerry and Joe, and also Jody as well. So it's all the J's I'm going for there. So if you guys fancy coming in and saying anything, do so. Don't feel like you need to do so, though. That's fine.
Do you reckon Sorby gets dropped next match? Pat Jones comes in?
No, I don't think so. Based on that one performance, I don't know. Although to be fair, I wouldn't have said town manager there's other past.
More in 14 minutes than Sorby Thomas did in the whole game.
Yeah, Sorba's not had a good game, has he? But I thought Sorba was all right against Stoke. I thought he worked quite hard. A lot of his end product didn't quite work. The outside of the foot cross in particular perhaps riled me at the time. But I think he's sort of he's having a mixed season. And Sorba, to be fair, has come a long way in a short space of time, and he will get peaks and troughs. So, and we've seen where the peaks are, haven't we? So, I would probably play Sorba again, but maybe if it's not working, give Pat Jones more time on the pitch than he's had today. You know, you can make that change quicker knowing you've got an effective or a potential effective sub. But the other flip side to that as well is, do you want to put too much on Pat Jones too soon, or will he thrive on it? You know, only the manager or head coach, if you like, will know that from his personality. So, but Pat Jones has given us a lot of reasons to be positive. Well, a couple of reasons to be positive tonight, and he's definitely going to be knocking on the door from now on. And I suppose as is Danny Grant and a couple of the others, especially with Josh Koroma also not quite hitting the straps.
The flip side to that, if you sub him and he's on the bench, Sorby Thomas, he might, get his head back in the game a bit, because you give him guarantee first football, and he's playing like that. And then you've got Pat Jones on bench and he comes on and makes a difference, then you might pick up a bit.
I think you're right, and I think you're absolutely right.
I
think I'd agree with Matt in the sense that I wouldn't necessarily probably drop Thomas just yet, but he's going to be on that coach knowing that Pat Jones, young lads, come on, scored a goal, taking this opportunity, and it won't be too long, until roles might be reversing. It's Pat Jones starting and Thomas coming on. He'll be aware of that. So it's a positive for Pat Jones, but it's also a positive for those players who are currently got a starting berth and might need just to kind of up the game a little bit. Do you know what I mean as well? So it's twofold. But like I say, having players that are pushing behind first teamers is only a good thing.
Yeah, thank Matty. Great stuff. Thanks, mate.
Yes,
we're going to move on to HTFC Stato. So Stato, if you want to unmute yourself, this is going to be an intrigue because Stato hides behind a photo of anonymity. I think I've said that word, so we'll be able to hear his voice for the first time. Do we call you Stato or do we call you by your real name?
Call me Ben.
Call you Ben. Ben, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good. Get it off your chest. Let it all out. Go on.
I think for as bad as Sorba was tonight, I think you'll look at it as he's made the goal for the first goal against Stoke, the goal against Birmingham. I mean, if he hadn't assisted at all, then maybe cause for being dropped. But I think he was our best player last season offensively. So I think we're now just looking at this season thinking that, yeah, he's not really been the same player, but that's Sorba standards, not like against Holmes' standards. I think for me, Sorba's not been up to it, but he's not been that bad. And the performance tonight, horrendous first half, but that's been the story of our season. Won the second half, to put it that way, but it's not been much for consolation. But it was a better performance than against Birmingham and against Burnley. And I think 10 days on the training ground for Schofield now, in the run to the West Brom game, should be doing the world of good, and maybe get a few additions in. Because I think definitely left back we need to look at strengthening, because Ruffles, I think we could Turton last season in a back line that was as strong as it was, we could sort of prop him up. But I think Ruffles this year, we're seeing his weaknesses more because of the downgrade in the quality of the back line. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with that. It's like I said at the start, we set this up, and I noticed a couple of players joined and I bottled calling a few of them out. So that's on me. It's that, but and it's one of those things where it's so early in the season and everything's so fresh that you don't particularly want to sort of, start going too deep on some players, because in a couple of weeks they could be, the best player in the team. But we do need to see a little bit more from one or two for sure. And I agree. A point you made in there was quite good, was that if the Coventry game does get suspended, postponed, whatever you want to call it, as we think it might do, then this gives almost an added week or so of pre-season that Danny Schofield's had, and maybe they can get back and work on a couple of things there as well, and hopefully Danny can push things on, and we can look better going into I think it's the West Brom, isn't it, who we have after that. So I think we're going to start wrapping up. I think Josh wants to come back in and say something, but we'll start wrapping up in a couple of minutes, unless Josh, you've got something you want to
I'll give you a positive, Matt.
Go on. I love a positive.
Utah.
Yeah, that is actually true. We haven't mentioned this, have we? Nakayama in the last 2 games has looked outstanding, hasn't he? Tell us why you like Yuta Nakayama.
Just good at ball, and I think when we saw him, you can only go off the highlights videos you see, but he looked comfy playing in defensive midfield as well when he were over in Holland. And I think you've seen over the last couple of games his ability to bring the ball out. He played a couple of lovely passes out of defence today, stepped out with the ball nicely, did his defensive duties really well. We look like we've got a good player.
Absolutely, 100%. I'm really excited by Yuta Nakayama, and I did say on Sunday, and I think Stephen Chicken, me and we both said it at a similar time as well, we're going to definitely see those mouth guards in the club shop by Christmas, aren't we? And you know what? I won't put it past some idiot like me to go and buy one as well. So, Luke, if you're listening, get them in the club shop. I think there'll be quite a lot of people in there, won't they? So I think unless anyone wants a very quick last request in, I think we'll probably call it a night on that one. So thanks everyone for joining us in. Thanks, Johnny. Thanks, Cozzy. Thanks everyone who's jumped in and had something to say. I think that worked quite well. So give us your feedback on this. Would you like to see us do this more, less? Let us know. And then we'll be back on Sunday, normal time, normal place. Cheers, guys.
Oh, what a night. Late in May in 2017, Schindler scored, it was a heaven dream. What a feeling, what a night. Oh, what a night. Wagner singing, we are Premier League. The greatest sight St. George's Square did see. What an evening, what a night. Oh, I got a funny feeling when he walks and a fence, and then the commentator yelled he takes that chance. Oh, what a night. Lost so safe and mesmerizing me. Low charge and flattened all Chelsea. Stamford Bridge, oh what a night. Whoa, I got a funny feeling when he walks and a fence, and then the commentator yelled he takes that chance.